Welcome everyone, this is Honest Restart, and this time we're talking about how Metroid Prime 4 is going to save both the franchise that is Metroid, but also Retro Studios, the developer that's responsible for developing Metroid Prime 4. Prime 4 has some serious potential, and it's gonna be the savior here, so that's what we're talking about today. Now before we jump into things, I want to quickly talk about my social media. There's a Twitter page, a Discord community, a Patron page, and a Twitch channel. If you are interested in any of that, check it all out. It's linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, subscribe. So before we get into specifically why I think Prime 4 is going to save both the franchise and Retro Studios, let's talk about the news that sort of got me to make this video. So recently, Video Games Chronicle reported that Retro Studios is going to be investing over $530,000 to expand their headquarters, but on top of that we've seen even more news of even more hires from AAA developers of first-person games to the team for Retro Studios. I'll just go ahead and quote the article right here. The studio has since hired a roster of AAA talent including GTA producer, Call of Duty veteran, Halo character designer, Warhawk director, and DICE artist, and there's other things that have come up, but the point is, they've been hiring a lot. Retro Studios has been getting bigger and stronger, and they are collecting a lot of high quality talent, and also now we are getting the news that they are expanding their headquarters. This is huge, and all of this, or at least a lot of this, has to do with Metroid Prime 4. Metroid Prime 4, I think, is revitalizing both the franchise and also Retro Studios. So now let's explain why exactly I think it's doing that. So when it comes to Retro Studios hasn't come out with a big new game since 2014, and that game was Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. Retro Studios hasn't come out with a bad game, but they also don't come out with a lot of games. The games they do come out with are good, but they're few and far between. There are 5, really. It's Metroid Prime, Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, Donkey Kong Country Returns, and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. You could also bring up Metroid Prime Trilogy, which is just a compilation of the 3 games they made during the GameCube and Wii eras, and then also they helped out with some of the tracks in Mario Kart 7 on the 3DS. And that's pretty much it in terms of what Retro Studios has done. And what's interesting about this is that when Nintendo picked up Retro Studios, this was around the same time that Nintendo lost Rare. Rare was really big for Nintendo, especially during the 90s. I talked about in the podcast earlier this week, they had a lot of games that came out on the Nintendo 64, and they were really high quality stuff. Some that come to mind are GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark, Killer Instinct, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Diddy Kong Racing, Donkey Kong 64. Some really high quality stuff. Some might argue that Donkey Kong 64 is not one of those high quality games, but I really liked it, so there you go. But the point is, Rare definitely provided a lot of high quality content, and from what I just listed there, that's more content in just the N64 era than Retro Studios has done for the entire 21st century. In other words, Rare had way more output than Retro Studios, even though Retro Studios, whenever they do come out with a game, it's really good. The point I'm trying to make with all of this is that Retro Studios hasn't done much. It's been a long time since Tropical Freeze. It's been 6 years. We're going to 2021 and we still don't know about anything from them besides Metroid Prime 4, and Metroid Prime 4 may not even come out next year. I think it's likely coming out 2022. So really what I'm trying to say here is that Retro Studios has not been in good shape, and for Nintendo fans like myself that grew up on the N64 and the GameCube and saw how awesome Rare was and saw them leave to Microsoft and be basically nothing like they used to be, but also see the awesomeness of Retro Studios, I've wanted them to come out with more games, but they just haven't. And over the years, during the Wii U era and even early into the Switch era, there's a lot of rumors and speculation that Retro Studios had to cancel a whole bunch of games, that there's a lot of strife going on within the company, and they just weren't doing really well. But with Metroid Prime 4, they are now developing this product. It seemed that Nintendo decided to give them a chance for whatever reason. I remember when they announced the Metroid Prime 4 delay, one of the old Game Informer editors, Imran Khan, supposedly having inside information, said that from what he heard, Retro Studios actually put together a demo. Nintendo saw it and liked it, and at that point they then decided to restart development for Metroid Prime 4 with Retro Studios. But besides that, we don't really know much else in terms of what's been going on internally with Retro Studios. But whatever it is that's been going on in the background, Nintendo has decided to trust them again. It seems that at the very least they knew what to do with Metroid, and Metroid has such huge potential, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And because of that potential to make an amazing Metroid game, Nintendo has given them Metroid Prime 4 to make it and make it amazing. And we've been seeing all these hires, and now they're expanding their headquarters. There's obviously a lot of money that's going into Metroid Prime 4. I mean, they already had this massive project that was in the works for years, and then they decided to restart development with Retro Studios. Nintendo definitely cares about Metroid Prime 4. This is meant to be a really big deal. This hopefully will revitalize the franchise, and it's just gonna do so many special things. But when it comes to Retro Studios, because Nintendo has trusted them with it, it seems that they're getting larger and expanding, and a lot of that seems to be to make Metroid Prime 4 the game it needs to be, an incredible game, a game of the year kind of game, a game that matches up to the quality of the original Metroid Prime. That's what they're trying to do here. But there may be even more amazing things coming from all of this. Not just an amazing Metroid Prime 4, but with an expanded studio and this increased amount of high quality talent working for the Retro Studios, we may see more games. We may not have to wait every 4 or 5 years just to get one game from Retro Studios. We might start to see more. It could potentially be a situation kind of like Monolith Soft, where Monolith Soft has some successful games and they've expanded and they now have several different studios and they're working on multiple games at once. Hopefully Retro Studios can afford to work on multiple high quality games at once and we start to see more products from them. As I already brought up earlier, Retro Studios hasn't come out with a game since 2014. It's possible it's been cancelled or delayed, but maybe they're still working on it. Maybe they're finalizing it, and that's also in the works. And maybe that's another reason why Retro Studios has been expanding, so they can afford to make more than one awesome game at a time. Once Metroid Prime 4 comes out and it is successful, Retro Studios may continue to expand, and we may see more high quality games come from them more frequently. But now let's focus specifically on the Metroid franchise. Metroid Prime 4, besides say for maybe Breath of the Wild 2, is the most anticipated game that's in development for the Nintendo Switch. It's gonna be huge. We haven't seen a Metroid game in years. Whenever Metroid Prime 4 is talked about, it definitely stirs a lot in terms of social media. There's a lot of potential here. But the problem with Metroid, even though in terms of reviews and critical acclaim and such, it's always been right up there with Mario and Zelda, sales-wise it hasn't been. But things are different with the Switch. Other franchises are finding a lot of success. Just look at Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem sells much better now, not just with the Switch, but it's reached a new audience, and I think a lot of that has to do with social media. There are other great game franchises out there right now that don't necessarily need a huge marketing campaign, so fans, or consumers I should say, discover this franchise and become fans of it. It's not just Mario and Zelda that do really well on Nintendo consoles now. Fire Emblem does really well, Splatoon does really well, Xenoblade is actually increasing in sales as well. And if you take a look at Animal Crossing has proven to be a bigger seller than Mario and Zelda. The point is that now, with social media, and especially with the Switch in terms of how well it sells in terms of software, Metroid has a huge opportunity to come out strong and has the potential to become another consistent multi-million selling franchise for Nintendo. And if that is the case, it would mean that Metroid Prime 4 is actually a new beginning for the franchise. It could be a situation where Metroid Prime 4 could come out, say, 2022, maybe 2 or 3 years later, we see another one, and we see them consistently. We don't have to wait for multiple generations to get a new Metroid game. That's what's at stake here. And considering all of these investments that Nintendo and Retro Studios seem to be making, they're definitely trying. Metroid Prime 4 has incredible potential here, and it's going to do so well that we may start to see Metroid games with more frequency. We've already talked about on the channel how there seems to be a 2D Metroid game in the works, and Prime Trilogy. I believe that Nintendo's going to use these Metroid games to start that conversation about Metroid next year, especially with the Metroid 35th anniversary, and all of this is going to be marketing with social media and word of mouth to build up more attention and curiosity for Metroid Prime 4 for when it does eventually come out. And as I said earlier, while I don't think Prime 4 will come out next year, I do think they're going to start talking about Prime 4. I think they're going to be teasing it, showing us maybe a little bit of footage, and we'll start to have an idea of how this game is shaping up. But basically, as I've been saying, because Metroid Prime 4 has such high quality potential, and because of the way the market works now, it has the potential to become an incredibly high-selling game that would lead to sequels that will also sell really strong. And I believe Nintendo sees that. So they are definitely giving Retro Studios the chance here to create an incredible game. And with that success, Retro Studios will continue to expand and bring out even more high-quality games. Maybe not just consistent Metroid games with other things, maybe like Kid Icarus or Star Fox or more Donkey Kong. We could see things like that in the future for Retro Studios thanks to Metroid Prime 4. So that's why I think Metroid Prime 4 is going to both save the Metroid franchise and Retro Studios. But what do you guys think? What do you guys make of the potential for Metroid Prime 4? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.